Hello, and welcome to the weekend episode of Views of an Outsider, Parenting Our Children, Parenting Ourselves, Part 3. More Toddler Misbehavior. 2 weeks ago, we started a new series that is based on the idea of taking the principles of parenting a child well, and then using those same principles to reparent ourselves. Regardless of whether you were somebody who had great parents, or someone who had parents who were not so great, none of us had perfect parents. So to varying degrees, we all require a bit of a do-over to help us let go of any unhelpful baggage that we are carrying around with us, so that we can be free to rise as high as we possibly can, while building a life for ourselves that is full of the best experiences that we can manage to soak up during our time here. There are a lot of people out there these days that are selling one version or another of self-help. But out of all of the experts that are available to choose from, I personally think that Jordan Peterson is the one that it makes the most sense to listen to. As a world-renowned psychologist, he's highly trained and qualified. He also has walked the walk and successfully raised 2 kids who have not only thrived in their own lives, but they still continue to have a voluntary, healthy relationships with their parents now that they are adults, which is basically the ultimate goal of the parenting adventure, and one that every parent hopes to actually achieve for themselves. Even though with 1 out of every 4 young people going completely no contact with their parents these days, it seems like fewer and fewer parents are succeeding on that front. To top all of this off, Jordan's advice has a proven track record. It has worked for thousands of people who have tried it, including his children who are now successfully raising his 6 grandchildren while also running successful businesses of their own. With a resume that boasts all of those selling points, you really couldn't ask for more when you're trying to decide who to trust. So that is where Jordan's new parenting series comes in. I found it both fascinating and extremely practical, which is one of Jordan's greatest talents. And even though the advice that he gives in his new series is meant for parents and soon-to-be parents, perhaps there are also some insights that we can find when it comes to the best way to set about parenting ourselves. On our first week, we took a look at the roles that parents play in their child's life. We considered what the spirit of the mother brings to her child's life and what the spirit of the father brings as well. We looked at the perspectives that they should each try to incorporate into their roles, along with some of the pitfalls that can be avoided if they're properly prepared ahead of time. Then we took all of that information and applied it to the idea of re-raising ourselves to be the people that we each aspire to be. Last week we did the same thing with Jordan's second episode, which centers around toddler misbehavior. Toddlerhood is a brief but magical time in a child's development. Toddlers bring a joy to life that is unlike anything else. What happens during those early years establishes the foundations for everything that comes after it. And likewise, you should pay attention to the quality of the foundations that you are laying for your own life. Starting out on a new journey is also a magical time, and you should try to capitalize on that enthusiasm while it is easily available to you right at your fingertips. But toddlers are also not without their issues. Toddlers are wonderful, curious, joyful little people. But they are also tiny barbarians who scream and fight, grab, kick, and hurt. It is the job of a loving parent to civilize their little barbarian so that they can successfully join the world. As a parent, it is your job to help these small and oftentimes insistent little people learn how to voluntarily bring their overwhelming impulses under their own control. And as adults, it's also our job to help the less mature parts of ourselves to do the same thing. There are 4 lessons that are helpful to consider when first undertaking this daunting task. We covered lesson 1 last week, which is set boundaries and keep to them. We looked at parental authority and the responsibility of parents to set boundaries for their children from a variety of different angles, so that we could discover exactly why setting boundaries is such an important thing for a parent to do in the first place. And we also took an in-depth look at what you are actually depriving your child of if you don't give them the security of a few well-considered but firm boundaries that can be relied on not to shift. So now let's take a look at the other 3 lessons of toddlerhood. Lesson 2 is teach your child to integrate himself or herself. One of the principles that was established by psychologists who intensely studied animal behavior for long periods of time is that targeted rewards are a very effective behavior modification technique. This method is even more effective than the use of threat or punishment is, although sometimes threat and punishments are necessary. Punishment comes more naturally to people because as human beings, we are hardwired to notice negative things in order to enhance our survival instincts, whereas noticing positive things requires a deliberate effort on our part. To use rewards effectively, you have to pay careful attention to the flow of activity that is going on all around you in your household. Then when you see someone going out of their way to do something thoughtful and kind, like washing the dishes, or when they put in an obvious effort to do something slightly better than they did before, or they did something that caused the family to come together in a positive way, you want to notice that so that you can reward it. And you want to tell the person exactly what you noticed and let them know that their action was appreciated. By doing that, you are letting them know that more of that behavior would also be welcome. As an effective parent, what you have to do is look for the times when things are going well in your household and then try to determine what exactly it was that people did that caused that desired outcome to happen. And then you want to call attention to what that person did and encourage them for doing it. An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure, so the saying goes. These sayings endure because they are true. So put in the effort to reward the good and be as specific as possible about that. Tell your child exactly what was good and why. For example, you've both been playing well together with no problems for 20 minutes now, and everyone is still having a good time. I'm really proud of you. That's very grown up of you. If you want to see more of a specific behavior in the future, you have to define it, point it out, and then reward it. All of this incentivizes the child to exhibit more of the behavior that you want to see. Even though our negativity bias means that we have to put in very deliberate effort in order to even notice the positive things, doing so is beneficial to you too, because it trains you to be attentive to what is working well in your household. Without that balance, you could easily come to only see the things that are going wrong. Smooth things tend to become invisible, which is not good for us. We need to notice the positive aspects of our life too in order to be healthy and happy in them. And as a parent, we also need to be aware enough to reward an incremental improvement, because that is another very useful tactic in encouraging positive behavior in your children. If they are putting out an effort to get along with their siblings, then you need to notice that as their parent. You need to point it out and reward that behavior with your approval and encouragement. Likewise, reward is going to be a more effective tool to use on yourself than punishment will be. But browbeating comes easier to all of us. That behavior is unfortunately second nature for human beings. Noticing what we do right, or even when we improved a little bit, requires deliberate effort on our part. But putting out the effort to notice those positive things is exactly how you will end up getting more successes out of yourself. And you'll be able to take more enjoyment in each of your successes too if you bother to actually notice them in the first place. The worry, however, is that if children always get a reward for good behavior, how do you teach them the value of cooperation for cooperation's sake? How do you teach them that these family values are the important thing, more than the reward is? There is the danger that a child could become manipulative in order to constantly receive rewards while not really learning anything, which means that they'll refuse to do the right thing when there's nothing in it for them. This is why you have to use rewards carefully as a parent. The trick is to expand your definition of what a reward is. A pat on the head and some words of praise can be a reward. To look your kid in the eye and tell them that they did a grown-up thing and that they did it very well is something that means an enormous amount to a young child. To express your affection and pride in them is something that can absolutely be substituted for a more tangible reward. Either way, you want to use validation of some kind to reward improvements and positive growth in the child. And when it comes to rewarding improvements in yourself, that doesn't have to mean big things like splurging on a fancy vacation or going on a shopping spree. You will find that giving yourself a little genuine praise and some heartfelt approval when it is well deserved, without being embarrassed to do so, will be something that you will find is more valuable to you than you might think it would be. Another effective method for encouraging desirable behavior in your toddler is to use play. For instance, let's pretend that we're going outside. How fast can you get your hat on? Wow, you did that really fast. Can you do it faster than I can? Use your toddler's natural desire to compete and to improve in order to motivate him to progress in the direction that you want him to. Harness his instincts to work in your favor. Then use praise and the validation that he is being a big boy or a good boy. Little things go a long way with our children and in ourselves. It's amazing how little it actually takes to create something meaningful for a fellow human being. And that should make us all a little ashamed that we don't take the time to do those little things to make the world a better place for everyone. As a parent, you'll have to experiment a bit because different kids respond to different rewards. And if you're fortunate, your child will respond very well to receiving an immediate, positive reward when they exhibit good behavior, and it's very likely that this will be the case. The other thing about rewards, and this holds true for punishments as well, is that you want to pair it with the behavior that it is connected to as fast as you can, especially for little kids. Consider video games as an example of this. The reason that people learn so fast when it comes to video games is the frequent and immediate reward system that is built into them. Immediate rewards, even minuscule ones like a cha-ching sound, is the most effective way to teach something new to someone in a short period of time. Now, when your child is eventually misbehaving on a day that rewards just aren't working, and he refuses to engage in play, and is generally just being difficult, that is when the other side of the coin comes in. Pick a chair or a step beforehand in some boring place in the home where there is nothing for the toddler to amuse themselves with, and when they misbehave, sit them there. They might go limp, they might refuse to sit down, they might run away. If they do, then bring them right back. You may have to hold them and look them in the eye and tell them, you are going to sit there until you get your act together. But it's important to go about this process in the right frame of mind. You have to not be angry. The fundamental reason for that is that there is risk when anger is involved, and it's not necessary. Putting the child in timeout shouldn't be a punitive thing either, which is another reason that you don't want to be angry at the time. It might take you a dozen repetitions to get this scenario down so that you can simply say, go sit on the stairs, and the child will actually go. But a handful of difficult experiences is worth it in order to gain a pleasant life that actually functions effectively. Counting is a strategy that works too, but only if you don't start over or start adding half numbers or any of that nonsense. At that point, you might as well be wearing a neon sign that says, I'm bluffing, and your toddler isn't stupid. They're going to notice a flashing neon sign. Count, and by the last number, if he's not where he's supposed to be, then put them there. The long-term goal is to get the child to follow the instruction to go to timeout voluntarily with no waiting, and to do that consistently every time. Likewise, if the promise of a reward isn't working on yourself, and you have a project that needs to be done, but your inner toddler is rolling around inside whining, "I don't want to, my tummy hurts, my legs are broken," and that part of you is just generally driving you crazy. If need be, take your own phone away and sit yourself down at the kitchen table with nothing else to do until you're ready to get on with it. It might sound silly, but it'll probably work. When you have chosen to be a responsible adult, don't let yourself be held hostage by the toddler version of yourself while you struggle to try and get motivated. Don't indulge the toddler on those days. Don't let him make you miserable by endlessly procrastinating. Just step right over the place where he has flung himself in the middle of the floor and do the thing, whether you feel motivated to do it or not. Afterwards, you'll be relieved, and you'll feel a legitimate pride in yourself for having conquered that obstacle inside of you. Timeouts aren't about control. They're about integration. The goal is to help integrate the wild drives that are making the child unruly, rambunctious, and difficult, so that the child is once again in the right frame of mind to rejoin the rest of the species and bring themselves back into the game that is being played in the family. If your toddler is running around being wild when that behavior isn't appropriate, meaning when it's not fun, and when it's causing them trouble or it's disrupting something that is necessary for the family, or irritating other people, sometimes deliberately, then use a timeout to encourage the toddler to take themselves in hand and start paying attention to the appropriate social cues around them. Teach them to use the timeout to regulate their behavior so that they are once again fun to be around and they can continue to interact positively with other people. Learning that kind of control over themselves helps a child develop neuropsychologically and cortically, which helps them mature beyond our infantile instincts. Maturing will make a child much more likely to develop friends and to be the sort of child that adults like to have around and to help as well. Remember the cautionary tale of the protester that I described last week. If your child has friends, and adults like them, then they'll be socialized and happy and even popular. Their friends will be willing to regularly engage with them, and adults will pay attention to them in a positive way as well by teaching them things, offering them opportunities, and not being irritated to have them around. Giving your child that quality of life is doing them a huge favor. When you're exercising your parental disciplinary control correctly, you're not tyrannically controlling the child. What you're doing is teaching them how to integrate their natural aggression into the other aspects of their personality so that they don't upset themselves or other people. That way, they become socially desirable, which will make for a more pleasant world for them to inhabit. By helping your child learn to integrate and regulate their emotions, you're doing them nothing but good. You don't have to worry that this will somehow crush their independence or their individual spirit. That's a lot harder to do than people think it is anyway. And when it comes to yourself, when you take the time to work on regulating and mastering your own emotions, you are doing yourself the same favor. When you integrate all of these aspects of who you are successfully, so that they are not at odds with each other, you will experience more peace and more joy too. Jordan says to imagine that there is a part of the child that is already integrated and developing into a fully mature personality. But there are these other facets that are floating around, like a rebellious tendency, or irritability, tiredness, a lack of emotional control, etc. These elements are more immature and they're more drive-related than true personality traits. So the child is a bit like a menagerie of warring impulses with a developing center at the heart of who they are. The center is what you want to encourage and to reinforce. That is who they really are, and that is the part associated with maturation. Some parents use a timer for timeouts, and that's not a bad way to do it because that predictability can help calm the child down. But an even better way to do it is to have them become self-aware enough to determine the moment of their own victory, instead of letting an arbitrary timer do it for them. Really what you're trying to do is to encourage the ability within the toddler to regulate their own emotions. And the immediate reward, as soon as they do that, is that they get to get up and rejoin the social fun. Sometimes it takes them 30 seconds to get themselves squared away. And sometimes it will take them 10 minutes to do the same thing. But the victory isn't that they obeyed you and sat on the step for X number of minutes. The victory is that they brought themselves under their own control. That is the mature ability that you are trying to instill in them. And if you've ever been at the mercy of your own runaway emotions, then you know that the ability to handle that effectively is something that your kid will thank you for teaching them. So when your toddler is acting up, tell them to go sit on the steps until they're ready to have a good day. They will sit there and contend with their own warring impulses until they're victorious. At each time they master themselves, that is another step taken in the maturing process. You've done your toddler a major favor just in terms of giving them the ability to control their own emotions, rather than leaving them to the mercy of something they don't even understand yet. It doesn't have to be any more complicated than telling them, as soon as you're ready to play nice, as soon as you're ready to act like a civilized human being, then you can get up off the steps. When they are sitting on the steps and they get control of themselves, that is a real victory. And you should celebrate their victory with them by praising them for their triumph. You should actually tell them, "You did a good job pulling yourself together there. I'm proud of you." They will know what you mean by that. Kids have a natural drive to integrate and to mature, and that's what you want to reward. Once again, get their instincts to work for you instead of against you. Each time that your child matures a little bit more, that's a victory for them. And for you as the parent who is successfully showing them the way to take on their life. That's what a real victory is in a family. Everybody wins if you're playing the game properly. You have to create an atmosphere that is conducive to your being better able to master the ability to regulate yourself as well. Not to get too personal, but I didn't have a great home life growing up. And a couple of months ago, an unexpected negative encounter with a family member sent me right back to that bad time in my life, now 2 decades in the past. This was a visceral reaction that I experienced, a physical reaction in my body, and I couldn't control it. I was right back in that exact same place where I was trapped and desperate and suffocating and panicked. I was on the verge of a full-blown anxiety attack, but for the very first time in my life, I didn't try to stuff it down in an attempt to make it stop. Not that an approach like that would have succeeded anyway. But I stopped fighting what was happening inside me, and I turned around and I faced it head on. I sat in it, as uncomfortable as that was, and I took every step I could remember to work through it and calm down. After an hour or two, my anxiety was definitely manageable, and by the next morning it was gone. And my first instinct was to chide myself for having reacted so strongly, as though my present life was still the same situation as my past. But then I stopped myself. This was a victory. This was a major step forward for me. Instead of doing the unhealthy thing like I had always done before and stuffing it all down inside of me and spending the next several days and nights in a state of unbearable anxiety, I had faced my demons. And I had managed to work through my panic and all of the other emotions that were swirling around in a matter of hours, not days. And I was actually in a good place when I came out on the other side of it. That's major progress. And progress is what victory looks like, my friends. So, what improvements can you expect to see in your parental life if you follow the tips in this lesson? If you teach your child to integrate himself or herself, then they will develop into the sort of child that you actually want to have around and do things with. Also, it will help your child transform into the sort of person that is very welcome in a playgroup and who other adults will pay attention to and teach and nurture in their journey. And in your own life of parenting yourself, if you learn to integrate yourself in healthy and productive ways, then you will become someone that you actually enjoy spending time with. You will be more confident in your ability to handle the things that come at you in life, and that will make you less anxious and more secure. You will be more at peace with yourself and take more legitimate pride in the person you are becoming, and other people will actually welcome you and respond to your energy in positive ways. Lesson 3 is, when a disciplinary issue arises, take space to master it. Every family has its truly difficult days. They are inevitable. So if you are having a disciplinary problem, it might come at a time when you're in a hurry, which might tempt you into taking shortcuts instead of dealing with the issue right then when it happens. But in all likelihood, the results of that poor decision will be that you'll have to deal with that same problem again and again and again. For example, if you're in the grocery store and your 2-year-old decides to have a very public meltdown, and you're in a hurry because you need to get the groceries bought, that's fair enough. But it's not going to be productive to be grocery shopping with a kid who is having a tantrum for the next 15 minutes, only to end up giving them a chocolate bar in the end just to shut them up, and then repeating that entire episode the next time you go to the grocery store, and the time after that, and the time after that. You actually just rewarded the child for persistent misbehavior by giving in, and you will definitely pay for that mistake. So if the child is misbehaving, the best thing to do in a situation like that is to take a breath, pick them up, take them out of the store, and then sit there with them until things are under control. And if necessary, do it again. You have to open up a space around the problem to keep it from becoming a pressure cooker under which you will get frustrated and angry. So that means that you will have to train yourself to expect that there will be episodes when your child is hungry, tired, or just misbehaving to see what will happen. And that's when you need to understand that you have to drop what you were planning to do temporarily, not forever, in order to focus on dealing with the situation at hand. Also understand that you're the adult in those situations and that you can, in fact, get them under control if you focus your undivided attention on them. Don't lose yourself to the overwhelming feeling of helplessness. Likewise, sometimes situations will arise in your own life that are inconvenient or embarrassing, but they have to be dealt with regardless. So don't create a pressure cooker for yourself by fighting it. Give yourself the grace to take a step back from everything else that you had planned and deal with the problem that has come up, rather than trying to juggle more and more balls in the air until everything comes crashing down, and you've now created problems with ongoing consequences. Then usually after that, you'll berate yourself for not being enough of a Superman to keep all of those balls in the air successfully, no matter what. Instead, remind yourself that you are capable of dealing with this problem if you have the right priorities and focus. Don't surrender to the desire to give up, crawl away, and hide. Look at the big picture. It's hard to regulate yourself in the moment when you need to be somewhere else right now and your child is losing it. But again, look at the big picture. What does need to be somewhere else really mean? What is the worst thing that will happen if you're not there until 10 minutes after you had planned to be? Look at the even bigger picture. Let's say, for example, that you need to be in church by 9 a.m. on Sunday mornings. Okay, so looking at the big picture would mean asking yourself, how many of these Sunday mornings am I going to have with my child? Around 50 a year for, say, 15 years? That's 750 times that you're going to do this little dance together. To get it right, you may have to pay the price of being 10 minutes late 20 times. But in exchange for those 20 delays, you will get 730 successful Sundays over the course of your life, and so does your child. You could also deal with that particular problem by planning to arrive 15 minutes early. Give yourself more of a buffer around events that are important to you. If you repeatedly run into situations where you're frustrated because you're not timing things right while you're in the middle of a transition with your child, then simply add 10 minutes to your estimate of how long things are going to take. That's often useful when you have toddlers anyway, because they're somewhat unpredictable in their goal-directed activities. You can either work so that you don't have to plan on that extra time, or you can take a load off your plate by giving yourself an additional 10 minutes of leeway in order to deal with the unexpected. Just build a pad right in from the beginning. You have to understand that when a disciplinary issue arises, you need to make space to master it. The way you can reconcile yourself to doing that is to understand that if you do it successfully, you won't have to do it very often. Whereas if you don't take that time now, this will become a regular, frustrating part of your life. So actually tell yourself, I have to not do what I thought I was going to do for the next 10 minutes in order to set things right. And if you do that, the next time it'll be 8 minutes. And the time after that, it'll be 4 minutes. Because these things do improve rapidly with consistency, just like your confidence will improve with each of your successes. A stitch in time saves 9 when it comes to discipline. Don't let things slip. Also watch and consistently tell your child when they are doing something right. Time has to be thought of differently with toddlers around. When your child is putting on his own clothes, you're patient with him because he's little and you expect that it will take him a while to be able to get it done. One of the mistakes that parents often make is to step in and do things more quickly for the child instead of taking the time to let them learn, which is what they actually need from you. And that's what you need too, even if you don't see it in the moment. It's faster for you to dress your child, but you don't want to be still dressing them when they're 7. And you definitely don't want them to still be fighting you and going limp in order to avoid getting dressed when they're 7. There are times, especially between the ages of 2 and 4, when you will have to let your time demands go so that you can concentrate on the priorities of the present, which is giving your child the opportunity and the room to grow that they need. Likewise, you need to give yourself space to grow, and you need to be patient with yourself in order to do that. It's about having reasonable expectations. If your child is 18 months old, and you tell them to put their shoes on, and when you come back into the room, and they haven't moved, their shoes aren't on and they aren't tied, if you were to get frustrated, that would be crazy. They're 1. But it is equally unreasonable to strip your child of their independence by setting your 7-year-old on your lap and having them stick out their foot so that you can put on their socks and then put on their shoes and lace them up and tie them for them. As funny as that picture might sound, it can actually end up happening if you as a parent Never allow your child to learn because it was always faster for you to do it yourself. Your priorities as a parent need to be clear in your own mind. Don't allow yourself to fall prey to the instincts of an Oedipal mother, smothering your child with love that interferes with the independence that they need in order to thrive. That is making yourself the priority, not the child. It's not good for the child, and it's not good for the parent either. Deep down, you will know if you are doing this if you take the time to look honestly. When we are doing wrong, even while telling ourselves that this is what we want to do, there is a sickening feeling to it. Shame can be a very useful warning flare if you pay attention to it. When your child is being uncooperative, you can reduce the amount of frustration that you will feel if you know that you're going to win. That is why you need to set aside some time together as parents for you to talk through the misbehavior and come up with a deliberate strategy. Figure out exactly what it is that you want to see happen during those episodes of misbehavior, and then come up with a plan that will get you there. Do the same thing with problems that reoccur in your own life. Take the time to think about what you would really like to have happen, and then come up with a well-thought-out, step-by-step strategy for how to get yourself there. The reason that people get addicted to slot machines is because if you pull the damn lever enough times, eventually it will pay off. And that is the last thing that you want to teach your child to do. One of the best ways to get a really persistent pattern of misbehavior instantiated in your child in a way that can't be regulated is to let them torture you for some indeterminate amount of time regarding whether or not they have to go to bed, and then randomly give in to them. If you do that, what you're inadvertently teaching your child is that if they are persistent enough, they'll eventually win. What you've taught them is to have insane persistence in the wrong direction. It's a seriously bad idea to do that to yourself and to your spouse, or to anyone else who will have to deal with your child. The best way to avoid that problem is to decide with your spouse what the rules are, especially around things that repeat, like meals and bedtimes, for example, and then stick to your guns. You want to establish islands of routine in your child's life, and that's a good concept for family life overall. If you plan things well, then every time you have to do something that happens every day, like eating or sleeping, it won't be a battle because there isn't doubt around it. Children will push boundaries when these islands of stability are first being outlined in a family, and some children will push more than others. But that just means that you have to be resolute in your determination, even in difficult situations. Maybe you're traveling, or maybe you have a child who is sick. But if you break those routines when there is a convenient excuse to do so, you'll find that you do that to your own detriment and to the child's. Likewise, you need stability in your own life, and that comes from structure. If you're not used to having that structure, the less mature parts of you may buck a little bit at first. But just stick to your decision and have confidence that the changes that you have thoughtfully decided to implement in your life are for your best because they're going to improve your life. In summary, as Jordan said, not too many rules, consistently applied, with the minimal force that is necessary, and plenty of patience. And then you'll have a life that runs as smoothly and as joyfully as it possibly can, with lots of space for play. And what improvements can you expect to see in your parental life by following these tips? If you learn when a disciplinary issue arises to create the space and take the time to master it, then you'll master trouble as it arises in the moment so that you don't have to drag it forward into more of your life. And you'll help yourself have the patience that is necessary to deal with the toddler's misbehavior properly, so that unnecessary temper doesn't enter into the situation. Likewise, when it comes to guiding yourself towards a fuller and deeper life, if you also give yourself the grace and the space to deal with the problems of the moment as they come up, instead of increasing the pressure on yourself by clinging too tightly to your preconceived plans, then your problems will actually get addressed in lasting ways instead of continuing to haunt you. And that means that with your problems truly getting dealt with, your life will continue getting better. Remember, life is what happens while you're busy making plans. And finally, lesson 4 is, parenting should never be about what other people think of you. Disciplining your child is very difficult in the face of other people's opinions about it. First of all, note when this outside judgment happens and talk about it together with your spouse. At the very least, as the child's parents, you want to have each other's backs. The first thing you want to do is to evaluate if the other person might have had a point. But if you think that your approach was appropriate, then come together in your conviction and be in lockstep about moving forward. If you aren't on the same page, then you need to battle that out until you reach a conclusion so that you can come back together. Because if your husband or your wife is truly on your side, then it's going to fortify you about the decisions that you've made and give you the confidence to move forward. Let's face it, there's a lot of craziness in the social world, and no matter what you do, you are going to face a lot of criticism as a parent for how you deal with your kids, especially if you are authoritative in your approach, which is the best approach for kids. Lackadaisical parenting styles and authoritarian parenting styles are both equally unhealthy for everyone. Authoritative is right in the middle, and it is the right approach to take. You want to evaluate the situation when you run into social criticism, but you also want to start formulating your own arguments. Why do you believe what you believe? You should take the time to work that out with each other. Likewise, it's healthy to know why you believe in the approach that you are taking in your own life, because believe me, you'll get criticized for that too. But when you know why you chose what you chose, and why you believe what you believe, and why you're on the path that you're on, then you can give all of the outside input that you receive the weight that it merits, and no more. It's a good rule of thumb to say that if somebody bothers you once, you should probably write it off. Maybe they were having a bad day. If you get bothered twice, it's time to take notice. And if you get bothered a third time, then this is a pattern. And you want to have your arguments in order so that you can deal with that. You want to think through all of your disciplinary strategies and discuss them together as the parents. Just know going into it that there is no widespread social agreement about the acceptable rules for parenting. You aren't going to get that, so don't rely too heavily on it. You'll have to have a discussion about what is acceptable in your home. A good place to start is to ask each other, when should we be concerned about our children's behavior? And a good answer is when one or both of us is having an issue with what's going on in the house. Okay, so what do you do then? You talk about it until you identify specifically what the issue is, and you've come to an agreement about what you're going to do about it. If you do that consistently, and you're paying attention to your household, then whatever other people have to say to you is going to matter a lot less in the face of the reality that you're getting the results that you want. Jordan pointed out, part of the reason I didn't allow my children to misbehave in public is because I didn't want them to attract negative attention from other people. That's not a good gift to give your children. You don't want your children to be the center of negative attention, being sensitive to the social milieu. You can also take not letting other people's opinions matter to you too far. For example, if you go to a restaurant and there's a 2-year-old running around everywhere, and his parents aren't doing their job to parent him, in that moment, obviously those parents don't care about what other people think. But they should, because their child is making a negative spectacle of himself, and it's not good for the child to feel that energy directed at them from the world. So you shouldn't be immune from concerns regarding your social reputation. But when those concerns enter your mind while you're busy dealing with your child, you're not focusing on what you should be focusing on in that situation. Trying to balance everything at once, the opinions of your church, your family, even the perceived opinions of strangers, can quickly become frustrating, especially if there are higher than normal expectations for you because you're in a position where you're expected to set a good example. But you still need to focus on the task at hand. Your interactions with your child shouldn't ever be overshadowed by what other people might think of you. If thoughts about how you're being seen are entering your mind, then you're not paying attention to the right things in that situation. Right now, you want to be paying attention to what's right for the child and what's right for your family. So you're putting the cart before the horse in those moments by worrying about your reputation. Think about it this way. If you were giving a speech in front of an audience and you started thinking about what those people thought about you, you're going to become self-conscious, and then you're going to trip yourself up. Because you shouldn't be thinking about what people are thinking about you. You should be thinking about what you're saying and how to find the next word that accurately conveys your message. Parenting is the same thing. If you're distracted by what other people think of your parenting, that should be a sign to you that you should be focusing harder on the situation at hand and doing the right thing for your kid. In the long run, that mindset solves both problems anyway, because if you do the right thing for your child, you will be setting a good example. Likewise, don't let people's opinions distract you from doing what you need to do for yourself in order for you to be able to travel down the road that you want to in life. Take the time to teach your toddler how to behave in a restaurant regardless of what other people might be thinking. Teach them that they can either behave at the table where there is enjoyment going on, or they can stand outside with one of their parents until they're enjoyable to be around again. This discipline is a gift to your child. When your toddler behaves well in a nervous restaurant full of diners that were expecting them to misbehave, instead of the child being a magnet that is drawing in an entire world of negative attention onto themselves, they'll actually receive praise from the surprised and appreciative adults that are there. See if they don't. Now, you're obviously not going to be able to sit there with a toddler for 2 hours, but 45 minutes is a reasonable goal. Once again, it's about having the right expectations, not too much and not too little. So take the time to think about what is reasonable for you to expect beforehand. And what improvements can you expect to see in your parental life by following these final tips? If you know that parenting should never be about what other people think of you, that will decrease the self-consciousness that you might otherwise feel when you go out in public with your children. And you will be able to focus on the issue at hand, which is how to encourage your child to develop properly, so that they are maximally socially attractive in a way that fosters their independence and self-confidence and enables your family to play together harmoniously and also to function well within the broader community. And on your own journey, if you give yourself permission to pursue the direction that you have thoughtfully chosen to take your life in, without allowing yourself to become overwhelmed by the opinions of everyone else on the planet, most of whom don't have a better track record for success than you did before you started this journey, then you will be able to focus properly on your own priorities, which are facilitating your ability to develop in the direction that you want to grow in, so that you can discover your maximum potential and enable yourself to live your life to the fullest degree possible in harmony with your surroundings and with yourself. It's always good to end on a practical note, and Jordan is especially good at doing that. So, once again, he gave the parents out there a homework assignment. Both parents should sit down separately and make a list of things that your child and your family do well. Include things that your toddler does extremely well, and things that your family does together with your toddler that work well. Then make another list of areas that need improvement. Then the two parents should sit down and discuss both of their lists. See what you agree on and what you disagree on, and see what strategy you can come up with to capitalize on the positive things and improve on the negative things. If you're on your own journey, then you can do the same assignment in order to assess what you do well and what things are working in your life, while also considering what is not working for you very well and where you need some improvements. Then you can strategize about ways to capitalize on the positive things and how to improve the negative ones. If you have a person in your life who you can trust to have your best interest at heart, then you can have them make a list too, so you can compare and contrast. Sometimes the people around us have insights about us that we miss. So it can be helpful to include them and not to try to do everything on our own. But only when you've chosen your traveling companions thoughtfully and well. Thank you for listening to today's episode. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please help me build this podcast into a success by clicking the like and follow button, because that is what does the trick in making these things successful. And I really hope you come back again next week. Until then, have a good week, my friends.